The last stand in red dust the planet was silent, except for the wind-carrying red dust across broken rocks and burnt metal. It used to be called Sector 9 Beta on the military map. Now, it was just a graveyard. 30 human soldiers lay, scattered, barely alive, their armor cracked, faces dirty, and blood mixing with the red soil. Commander Riker stood in the middle, staring up at the dull red sky. His helmet was off. He had no energy left. Around him, his men coughed, groaned, and whispered prayers. No one expected help. Their last message to Earth had gone silent 3 days ago. The enemy had destroyed the main ship. They had no food, little water, and oxygen was running out. They were dying, slowly, painfully, and forgotten. Private, the youngest of them, was only 19. He was lying near a burned-out engine, clutching his side where shrapnel had torn through his body. He wasn't moving much now. His lips were dry. His voice was fading. "Commander, tell my mother I tried," whispered, tears in his eyes. Commander Riker walked over and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. His face was hard, but his eyes were red. "No one's dying today," he said, though even he didn't believe it anymore. Just then, a low hum filled the air. It was soft at first, almost like music. The soldiers froze, heads turned to the sky. Weapons were raised slowly, hands shaking. It didn't sound like an enemy fighter. It didn't sound like anything human at all. The red clouds above began to glow. A silver light cut through the dust, growing brighter with each passing second. Something was descending. No engines, no fire, just light, soft and pure. Everyone, defensive positions, Riker shouted, but they were too weak. Most couldn't even stand. They waited, expecting death. 3 silver pods floated down gently. They didn't crash. They landed like feathers. The hum stopped. Silence returned. Then, the pods opened with a hiss. Out stepped 3 tall figures, not human. Their skin shimmered like pearl. Their eyes were large, calm, and glowing blue. Each wore a robe with strange symbols glowing on their chests. They didn't carry weapons. Instead, they held small glowing orbs in their palms. One of them looked around at the broken soldiers and raised her hand slowly, not in threat, but in peace. "What are they?" whispered Sergeant Deeks, gripping his rifle tightly. "Aliens," Riker muttered, "but they're not attacking." One of the alien figures stepped forward. Her face was soft, not like a soldier, but like a mother. She knelt beside Private who had now stopped moving. "Get away from him," one of the soldiers yelled, but before anyone could react, the alien placed the glowing orb on Yuno's chest. A soft light pulsed through his body. His skin changed color, from pale to warm. His breathing returned. The boy gasped, then blinked. "I'm alive," Yuno said, voice shaking. The soldiers stared. No one moved. The second alien moved to another soldier. He had a broken leg, bone showing. The alien knelt, placed her orb, and the bone began to shift, healing under the skin. "They're not enemies," one of the soldiers whispered. "They're nurses." Commander Riker stepped forward, face full of confusion. "Why would alien nurses come here? Why help us?" The third nurse finally spoke, but not with a mouth. Her voice entered all their minds at once, clear, calm, cold. "We heard your pain. We follow the vow of healing. Species do not matter. We came to heal." The men looked at one another, their rifles slowly lowered. Some still didn't trust. Others cried. "But we're soldiers," Riker said aloud. "Why would you help soldiers?" The nurse placed her hand on Riker's arm. Her touch was warm. "Because once, we were soldiers too. We chose a better path." The sky above rumbled. Again. This time, not from the nurses. A signal had been sent. Something else was coming, and it wasn't peaceful. But for now, in that broken field of war, hope had landed from the sky. Do no harm. Unless provoked, the red sky had quieted. But the minds of the soldiers were storming. Private was sitting upright now, breathing steadily, eyes wide in disbelief. His bandages were gone. The hole in his side, closed as if it had never existed. He looked at his own hands as if they weren't his. He had been dying minutes ago. Now, it felt like his body had been remade. Commander Riker couldn't stop, staring at the alien nurses. 3 of them, tall, graceful, silent. They moved with slow, controlled motions, their glowing orbs still humming softly as they passed over each injured man. But not everyone was calm. Sergeant Deeks kept his weapon close, Eyes narrowed. "I don't trust them," he muttered under his breath. "Healing us. Why? They're aliens. They have their own reasons. Maybe they're keeping us alive to experiment on us later." "Deeks," Riker warned quietly, "they just saved 2 lives. Yours could be next. I'd rather die with my own blood than wake up with alien tech inside my brain." But it wasn't just Deeks. Suspicion was rising among the others too. The war with alien species had lasted years. Earth's trust had shattered long ago. Peace talks had failed. Whole cities had been lost. Now, suddenly, these alien women, nurses, or whatever they truly were, had descended from the sky and started healing the same humans. Their kind once fought. Something felt too easy, too perfect. One soldier, Corporal Jensen, approached the nurses with slow steps. "What are your names?" he asked, voice trembling. "Do you even have names?" The nurse in the center, the one who had saved turned her head slowly. Her voice echoed again, not in sound, but directly inside their minds. "I am Elia. She is Nari. The third is Vika. We are the Ilyari Order. We are healers of life. We serve no army. We do no harm unless provoked. Unless provoked." Deke snapped, stepping forward. "So you can fight." Nari, the second nurse, looked at him, her large glowing eyes completely emotionless. "We choose not to, but our history knows war too. Healing became our only salvation." There was a silence, the kind of silence that made people question everything they thought they knew. Elia turned and walked toward a soldier lying completely still, Lieutenant Hayes. He hadn't moved in over an hour. A long piece of metal had pierced through his stomach. The other men had already given up on him. Elia placed her glowing orb near his wound. The orb changed color from blue to orange, then to white. Her eyes widened slightly. "His life thread is tangled. I may not save him fully," she said, but still, she knelt and began humming a slow, soft song in a language no one understood. The orb floated above Hayes' chest, spinning gently. Everyone watched. Even Deke stopped speaking. The hum rose. The metal in Hayes' body began to dissolve slowly, as if the air itself was turning it to dust. His chest began to move. Then his fingers twitched. But as the healing continued, a loud metallic thud echoed from the ridge above them. Everyone turned. A figure stood in the distance. Not human, not Ilya or Idat. It was a war drone. One of the enemy's scouts. 6 feet tall, black, with 3 red eyes scanning the ground. It clicked and beeped, taking photos, recording movement. The same kind that had slaughtered hundreds in the last war wave. "Don't shoot," Riker whispered. "We're too exposed." But someone panicked. A young soldier, brand new, barely trained, grabbed his sidearm and fired. The drone took the hit, sparked, then spun in the air and launched itself backward into the sky. "It's gone to report." Deeks yelled. "We're exposed." Riker clenched his fists. "That thing just sent our location. Enemy forces will be here within hours." Ellie stood up slowly, her orb dimmed. She looked toward the sky, her expression unreadable. "They are coming. We must prepare," she said. "You said you don't fight." Deeks growled. "So what are we supposed to do? Sit here and sing with you while they burn us alive?" "We do not fight," Vika said, stepping forward. "But we can defend. Through shields, through knowledge, through the body's own power. There are other ways to protect life." Jensen frowned. "What do you mean?" Nari raised her hands and revealed a crystal-shaped device the size of a hand grenade. But instead of a weapon, it emitted a shimmery blue wall that spread 10 feet wide in the air. "This will last for 2 minutes per unit," she said. "We have 7. Choose wisely." Now the soldiers had to make a choice. Would they trust the nurses and defend them while they continued to heal? Or would they try to escape on foot? Risking everything, Riker looked around at his men. Some still bleeding, some half alive, some walking, but barely. The alien nurses had changed. Everything in just 1 hour. But was it enough? That night, while the others prepared for battle or rested with one eye open, a scream echoed from the east side of the field. A soldier was missing. When they searched, they found a trail of blood leading to the trees, and in the middle of the trail, they found Vika. One of the nurses, kneeling beside something in her hand, was a knife. Dripping, Deeks raised his rifle instantly. "I knew it. She's one of them. I knew." "No." Riker interrupted, staring at the body beside her. It wasn't a soldier. It was another drone. Crushed, smashed, The same drone. From earlier. Vika looked up. Do no harm, she whispered in their minds again, unless provoked. The soldier, who couldn't walk the sun on this planet, never truly rose. It just sat behind thick red clouds, casting an endless twilight over the land. The dust didn't settle, the silence didn't last, and neither did trust. Commander, Riker hadn't slept since the drone incident. He sat by the remains of the old supply rover, holding the broken comm device, knowing Earth still couldn't hear them. He kept glancing toward the nurses, particularly the one named Vika, who had destroyed the drone the night before. She had saved them, but still. Some soldiers looked at her with suspicion. What kind of healer carried a blade? Then there was Private Marco Don Marco had always been the strongest among them before the ambush 3 weeks ago. The blast had torn through his legs. They tried everything to stop the bleeding. They wrapped him in every type of gauze, poured every packet of nano they had. But nothing worked. The bones were shattered. The nerves were damaged. He hadn't stood since. Marco hadn't complained once. He only asked one thing every morning. Did we make it through the night? And every morning, Riker would answer. Barely. That morning, Elia approached Marco. She didn't speak. She simply stood over him. Her glowing orb pulsing softly. Marco looked up at her with tired eyes. You gonna do magic on me too? He asked with a weak grin. She didn't smile, but she knelt down beside him and placed the orb near his legs. It changed color, green, then yellow, then a deep violet. Her eyes flickered. Damage is old, scarred, but still alive, she said. In their minds, alive's a stretch, Marco muttered. I've been dead from the waist down for weeks. Elia placed one hand above each leg and closed her eyes. The humming began. That strange, ancient song again. This time, it wasn't just sound. It was vibration. Soldiers around them paused to watch. Even Deeks, who hadn't trusted the nurses from the beginning, stopped cleaning his weapon. To stare, the orb's light seeped into Marco's body, through his skin, past his veins, deeper. His body twitched. He clenched his jaw. His hands gripped the dirt. Then something changed. I feel something, he gasped. My toes. I could feel them moving. It was faint at first, like waking from a long, cold dream. But it was real. The nerves were waking up. Bones were pulling together. Muscles reformed beneath the skin. Riker stepped forward, stunned. Is this permanent? Elia opened her eyes slowly. Healing depends on belief as much as biology. He must walk to truly walk. What does that mean? Deeks asked, frowning. But Marco understood. He looked down at his legs, now glowing faintly with the last of the orb's energy. The pain was fading, and in its place strength was returning. The nurses stepped back. Elia nodded once, and then, in complete silence, Marco pushed himself up, one elbow, then both arms, the knees, and then, slowly, he stood. Soldiers gasped. He swayed once, but did not fall. I'm standing, he whispered. I haven't stood in 23 days. He took one step forward, then another. Riker couldn't believe it. Marco was walking, not perfectly, but walking. Some men clapped, others dropped to their knees in shock. Even Deeks lowered his weapon completely, but just as hope returned to the camp, reality knocked again. A sharp buzzing sound echoed across the field. Then a series of bright flashes on the horizon. They're here, Nari said, eyes glowing. The enemy. We have minutes. Riker called out orders instantly. Get into formation, everyone able to move. Grab a weapon. Nurses, can you shield us again? Vika raised her palm, and 3 defense crystals floated into the air. They spread out, projecting shimmering domes of energy across key positions. Nari moved beside the injured soldiers, shielding them with smaller barriers. But then, a strange whirring sound came from behind the nurse's ship. Jensen ran to check and found something unexpected. A 4th pod, cracked open, empty. He called out, Commander, there's another pod here. But whoever was in it, they're gone. What? Riker shouted, rushing over. Inside the pod were strange medical tools and blood, human blood. Who was in here? Riker asked, turning to Lea. Her face showed surprise and confusion. There should not be a 4th. Only 3 nurses came. A dark realization passed between them. Someone or something else had arrived with the nurses, and now it was missing. Before they could investigate further, a soldier at the lookout shouted, enemy incoming, 10 vehicles, ground-based, heavy class, Time was gone. The camp transformed. The injured were rolled under shields. Those who could fight took cover. Marco stood behind a broken engine, gripping a plasma rifle. "You sure you're ready?" Riker asked. Marco grinned. "I just got my legs back. Commander, I'm not sitting this one out." In the sky, thunder rumbled. Dust blew across the land like a curtain rising before a final act, but hidden in the trees. Just beyond sight, a lone figure crouched. It was not human. It was not a nurse. Its eyes glowed red. It watched and waited. The choice to kill or heal. The sound of war was returning, not with a scream, but with a low, rising thunder from the earth itself. The enemy convoy was approaching. 10 dark vehicles, massive, spider-leg machines that moved like crawling bunkers, each bristling with weapons, their blinking red lights pierced through the red haze, and their mechanical roars echoed across the wasteland. Commander Riker stood at the front line, gripping his rifle, eyes fixed on the horizon. Behind him, the soldiers took their positions under the blue shimmer of the nurses' energy shields. Some were half-healed, some could barely hold a gun, but they were ready. Marco, newly walking, stood beside Sergeant Deeks. The two nodded without words. Their past distrust of the alien nurses was slowly turning into something else. Something quiet and hard to admit. Respect. Behind the soldiers, the 3 Ilyari nurses stood in a half-circle, orbs glowing bright and spinning faster. Elia was pale, her breathing slower. "We are draining," she said in their minds. "If we keep shielding and healing, we will lose energy. We may not survive." Riker turned, then pulled back. "Well, hold the line. You've done enough." But Elia looked into his eyes. Her expression was calm. "No, this is the moment where life must choose to end or to protect." Suddenly, Nari raised a hand. "Something is moving in the trees. Behind us." Riker froze. The fourth pod. The missing figure. Before anyone could react, a tall silhouette stepped from the forest. It was humanoid, about 6 feet tall, clothed in a gray coat torn at the edges. Its face was covered with a dark mask, but its eyes glowed, not blue like the Ilyari, but red. It carried no weapon. The soldiers aimed their rifles. "Identify yourself," Riker shouted. The figure stopped, then slowly removed its mask. Gasps rippled through the group. It was human, or at least it had been. The face was marked with scars. The skin had traces of implant lines and artificial veins. The eyes were cybernetic, glowing red. But beneath all that, the bone structure was clearly earthborn. "I am Leorin," the figure said, voice cold, mechanical, and yet strangely emotional. "I was once a human soldier, until they left me behind." "Who left you?" Deeks asked, confused. "Earth Command," Leorin replied. "Sector 5 Alpha. I was wounded. I crawled into a crater and bled for 2 days. Then the Ilyari found me." He looked at the alien nurses. Vika stepped back slightly. Nari tilted her head in surprise. "You are one of us," Elia whispered. "But you left the circle of healing." Leorin's eyes narrowed. "I saw what healing led to. We saved creatures that returned to burn our homes. I no longer believe in mercy." He turned to Riker. "I offer you an escape. Right now, there is a gap in the enemy formation. I can lead 20 of your men through the valley while the rest distract the machines. You'll survive, but you'll have to leave the nurses behind. They'll be taken, used, maybe killed." The silence that followed was heavier than any weapon. The soldiers looked to Riker. Every second counted. Leorin's voice dropped to a whisper. "Commander, you don't owe these aliens anything. They are not human. They are not ours. You choose. Save your men, or die for the ones who don't belong." The words stung, but Riker didn't move. He turned to Lea. She said nothing, but her eyes held no anger, no plea, just understanding. Then Marco spoke. "They belong. They chose to stay when no one else did," Deeks added, "and they healed us when even Earth forgot us." But Leorin stepped forward, eyes flashing. "I was forgotten too. Do you think their healing is pure? No. Their technology changes you. It rewrites you. I let them fix my heart, and they took my humanity." Elia finally spoke. "You rejected your humanity long before we touched your chest." Leorin raised a small device. It blinked red. "A signal jammer. The convoy won't stop. The moment they arrive, they'll destroy everything. I give you one last chance, Commander. Choose your men or your ideals." Riker walked forward, rifle lowered. He stood between Leorin and the nurses. I made my choice the moment they healed my men. Then he turned to the soldiers. All of you, if you want to leave with him, I won't stop you, but I'm staying. I'd rather fall beside those who save than live beside those who kill. No one moved, not a single soldier. Followed Lio or Don. Marco stepped forward and spit in the dust. We're not rats running from a storm. Deeks raised his rifle. We stand. With the healers. Leorin looked at them one by one. His face didn't change. So be it. He said. He tapped the device. A flare shot into the sky, and the red lights on the horizon began moving faster. The machines had found them. Leorin turned and vanished into the trees, leaving behind only dust. As the enemy approached, the nurses placed their hands together. A beam of white light rose into the air, forming a protective dome, thin but glowing. Nari whispered into their minds, hold, just hold, until we can awaken the planet. The planet? Riker asked. Stunned, Eka looked up. This world is not dead. It remembers, and it protects its own. The ground beneath their feet began to vibrate, and somewhere deep below, something ancient was waking up. The DNA secret. The air had changed. It wasn't just the rising dust or the glow of alien shields. It was deeper, like the planet itself had taken a breath. Beneath the soldiers' boots, the earth trembled gently. A low hum pulsed through the ground like a distant heartbeat. The enemy machines were still advancing, slow but certain, their legs crunching across broken rock. The first shell hadn't landed yet, but everyone could feel the pressure. It was like standing beneath a sky full of lightning, waiting for it to crack open. Commander Riker stood near the nurses, jaw clenched. He had made his decision. They all had. No one left with Leorin. No one betrayed the ones who healed Dot. But now, time was short. Nari, he asked, turning toward the quietest of the three Ilyari nurses, what did you mean? You said the planet remembers. What are we standing on? Nari stepped forward. Slowly, her face, always still, showed a flicker of something new, regret. This planet is not a battlefield. It is a sanctuary, a grave, and a vault. Riker frowned. Vault? Of what? She looked at him. Your future. Before he could respond, a sharp cry echoed through the camp. Private, you know, still recovering, was screaming in pain. His body was glowing faintly, but not from any injury. Elia rushed over and touched his forehead with her glowing orb. Her hand stopped. Then her face changed. She turned slowly to Riker, her voice entering every soldier's mind. It has begun. What's happening to him? Riker demanded. Not just him, Vika said, scanning the camp. All of you, you're changing. Panic spread fast. Some soldiers began checking their arms, their skin, their hearts. But there was no pain, only warmth, energy, strength. Then Nari spoke the words that silenced everyone. The reason we came to this planet was not only to heal. She raised a hand and projected a memory, a hologram of a destroyed Ilyari lab deep in space. Burning. Scientists screaming. Vats of glowing liquid, destroyed. Symbols flashing red. The Ilyari Order had once protected a rare genetic code. It came from a single blood sample found on an abandoned Earth ship decades ago. It was unique, strong, immune to the plague. That swept the stars. She turned toward Marco. That blood was yours. Marco froze. Mine. Elia stepped in. Not just you. Many of you. Each one of you was chosen for this mission for a reason. Not by Earth Command, but by us. Now Riker was furious. You used us? No. Nari said calmly. We protected you. Earth Command didn't know what it carried. But we did. Your DNA holds resistance to the viral weapon designed by the enemy. You are the cure. The only known one. Riker staggered back, as if the truth hit harder than any blast. You mean to say, our blood is medicine, more than medicine? Vika whispered. It is salvation. And the enemy knows it now. The enemy machine stopped. A loud, mechanical howl pierced the air. From one of the larger vehicles, a new figure stepped. Down. It was not a drone. It was tall, wearing obsidian armor with spikes along its back. Its head was covered by a mask made of bone, a symbol burned across its chest. The mark of the Zolari Dominion, the species that had started this war long ago. A translator chip clicked to life. Surrender the nurses, the voice said, metallic and cruel, and we will spare the humans. Refuse, and we will take their blood by force. No one moved. Commander Riker stepped forward and shouted back. Tell your masters they'll have to fight for every drop. The soldiers raised their rifles. Even the wounded crawled to cover. But Marco stepped forward with his rifle slung on his back. He held no weapon, just an idea. He looked to Elia. You said we are the cure, but what if we don't just use it? To heal? She nodded slowly. Then Marco walked past the shield line, into the open field, and raised both hands. The Zolari leader aimed a weapon at him. But Marco did not stop. He rolled up his sleeve. I am human. I am soldier, and I am immune. The wind whipped his hair. The dust swirled. And then, the planet answered Dot with a deafening roar. The ground beneath the enemy machines cracked. Blue veins of light tore through the soil. Ancient stone pillars rose up from beneath the earth, glowing with symbols none of the humans had ever seen. The nurses fell to their knees. Nari whispered, the planet remembers. Suddenly, roots shot up from the ground, massive, thorned, alive, wrapping around two of the enemy tanks and crushing them in seconds. The soldiers cheered. But Elia was not smiling. She was staring at Marco. His body now glowed, not from their technology, but from something deeper. His DNA was no longer just a mute dot, it was awakening. You were not just chosen, she whispered. You were built for this. When the guns went silent for a moment, there was no war. There were no bullets, no blood, no cries, just silence. A silence so strange that it felt like the entire galaxy was holding its breath. The roots that had crushed the enemy tanks began to withdraw, sliding back into the glowing cracks in the earth. Dust settled slowly. The sky shifted, turning from dull red to soft violet. The heartbeat of the planet, the same low hum that had been pulsing through the ground, grew stronger, louder, deeper. Private Marco stood in the open field, his veins glowing gently under his skin. His body trembled, not with fear, but with some unfamiliar energy now rising inside him. His breath was slow, his hands open. Behind him, the soldiers stared in disbelief. Beside them, the alien nurses knelt with their palms pressed into the soil, eyes closed. They were whispering, but not with words. They were speaking to the planet itself, or maybe listening to something ancient that had finally awakened. Commander Riker took a few steps forward, staring at Marco. What's happening to him? Elia, still on her knees, opened her eyes, and they were brighter than before. He is becoming what Earth forgot it could create. Not a weapon, not a soldier, a bridge. A bridge to what? To peace. Just then, the Zolari leader stepped closer from the enemy lines. His armor hummed with energy. He raised a blaster, the size of his arm, and pointed it at Marco. You will surrender the nurses now. The mechanical voice barked. And you will kneel, or burn. Marco didn't flinch. He stared directly into the alien's eyes. I am not your enemy, he said softly, but the Zolari leader took it as weakness. He fired. A bright red beam shot from his cannon, screaming, through the air toward Marco's chest. But it never touched him. It froze inches away and dissolved in midair like ash. The planet responded again. A surge of light exploded around Marco in a perfect circle, pushing the Zolari backwards. His armor cracked. He screamed. The soldiers behind Marco broke into cheers, but Riker raised a hand. Hold your fire. Let him finish this. Marco turned, slowly walking back toward the human lines. The light around him dimmed. Though his skin still glowed faintly, his body looked more alive than ever. He stopped beside Riker. Commander, they're not going to stop unless we show them something stronger than pain. Riker looked confused. What's stronger than pain? Marco turned to LEA Dot, and the nurse whispered, Memory. She stepped forward, her orb now glowing pure white. Vika and Nari joined her, each holding a fragment of ancient Ilyari memory, holographic spheres that held more than data. They held the truth. Without another word, the nurses raised their orbs into the air. A massive beam of light shot upward, exploded into a swirling display of memory. Above the battlefield, visible to all Dot, it showed the first humans arriving. In space, brave, unsure, but kind. It showed early alliances between Earth and Ilyari. It showed betrayal, but also forgiveness. It showed war, but also healing. Children from both races laughing together, soldiers laying down weapons. A nurse, Ilyari and human, holding hands over a wounded alien child. The sky became a moving film of forgotten truth. Even the enemy soldiers stopped. Even the Zolari paused. For many of them, it was the first time they had seen something other than fear in humans. Commander Riker walked to the center of the camp. He dropped his rifle. Then slowly, one by one, the soldiers followed, rifles, pistols, knives, all dropped into the dust. Nari's voice rang in every mind. If they choose peace, we will heal all, even the ones who once harmed. Bika added, but if they choose war, we will bury the stars in silence. The wind blew gently. The machine stopped moving. Then something incredible happened. One of the enemy foot soldiers, a Zalari warrior covered in dark armor, dropped his blaster. Then another, and another. Soon, dozens of alien soldiers stood still, weapons down, eyes up, watching the memories above. The Zalari leader, now breathing hard and weak from the blast earlier, fell to his knees. He stared at the humans, tired, bloody, but standing proud beside the nurses. He looked at Marco. You are not a soldier. Marco smiled. No, I'm a student of what they taught me. The sky shimmered. And then, all at once, the guns went silent. The shields powered down. The nurses dropped their hands, exhausted but smiling. There was no cheering. No music. Just peace. And it was the loudest sound they had ever heard. The healers of two worlds. It had been 3 weeks since the guns fell silent. 3 weeks since 30 wounded human soldiers stood unarmed before machines of war and chose not to run, not to fire, but to protect the ones who came to heal. 3 weeks since the planet itself awakened. Now, the battlefield had turned into something else, something quiet, something sacred. Where blood once soaked into the red dust, now strange, silver-blue flowers had begun to grow, tall, with transparent petals and stems that hummed when touched. The Ilyari nurses called them remembrance blooms. They only grew where war ended without violence. Private Marco stood among the glowing flowers, his new legs strong beneath him. He no longer needed a cane. His hands were steady, but something inside him had changed beyond the physical. His thoughts moved differently. His heart beat with something more than survival. It beat with purpose. Elia stood beside him. Her robes were torn at the edges, her face pale from exhaustion. Yet she smiled more now, faint, quiet smiles that didn't need words. You stayed, Marco said, turning toward her. She nodded. Until the last soldier is whole. Behind them, the remaining human troops were helping the Ilyari nurses rebuild the sanctuary. What used to be a battlefield was now being transformed into a healing station, a place where both species would train, rest, and recover, not just from wounds, but from hate. Commander Riker stood near a stone monument, unfinished, but already beautiful. Its shape resembled the hands, one human, one Ilyari, meeting at the center, holding a single orb. A message was carved into the base. We came to fight. They came to heal. But together, we remembered how to live. Back on Earth, things were changing too. Word of what happened on that planet, known now as Virel 9, spread faster than any weapon. Videos taken by soldiers, holographic memories, recorded by the nurses, and even enemy soldiers testifying to the miracle. All of it went viral across human space. It was no longer just war news. It was history. For the first time in decades, Earth Command opened communication with the Ilyari. Cynics called it propaganda. Strategists called it a trap. But civilians, they wept. Mothers who had lost sons in the war reached out to the nurses. Children sent letters. Artists painted the moment when Marco walked into the enemy's path with no gun, only truth. And then came the surprise. Earth didn't just talk. They asked to learn. They asked to send students to the Ilyari sanctuaries. Nurses, doctors, and even young soldiers began applying for the Virel program, a joint healing initiative named after the planet that changed everything. And from all the applicants, only 30 were chosen for the first group. One of them was Marco. Before he boarded the ship, he returned to the clearing where it all began. The roots that had risen from the earth were now still, petrified in crystal, like ancient sculptures. He placed his palm on one. Thank you, he whispered, for listening to us, for trusting us. Elia met him near the launch pad. You are not the same boy we found in the dust, she said. He smiled. And you are not just a healer anymore. She tilted her head. What am I then? You're a bridge too. He replied. Then he did something rare, something many humans were still learning to do with Ilyari. He bowed, not from duty, but from deep respect. She did the same. As the ship lifted, carrying Marco and the new generation of healers away from Earth, thousands watched from every continent. People waved. Some cried. And far in orbit, on a silent channel, a message was broadcast across human and Ilyari space. They came as strangers. We met as enemies. But we chose to become something more. Epilogue. The nurse and the bladder years later. Children would gather at the foot of the monument on Virel 9. A guide would point to a photo of the original 30 soldiers, standing beside 3 Ilyari nurses, tired, wounded, but smiling. And one child would ask, why did the nurse carry a knife if she came to heal? The guide would smile gently, because sometimes they would say, to protect life, you must be ready to fight for peace.